Welcome back to Big Mouth and fancy seeing you here. Doctor Who has a divided fandom. I'll tell you a little secret, saying that's not very secret. All fandoms are always divided. But the Doctor Who fandom is more toxic than usual. And to be honest with you, my experience of the Doctor Who fandom, ever since I've been a fan, has been of a toxic environment. Ever since, really, Stephen Moffat took over. I remember I used to go on a Doctor Who kind of thing on Facebook where we all used to give our opinions. I used to get DMs threatening to kill me. People telling me my name that I already knew. Just nonsense. It got really heated. So the fandom's always been divided. It's always been toxic. And this doesn't just solidify to males, by the way. Women can just be as bad, sometimes even worse than the men. So, yes, but right now we're an even more divided fan base because you've got one side being honest about their feelings about the show and the other side going, shh, don't say anything. It's crap, but it's a secret. We don't want anyone to know. So you've got Mr. TARDIS and his minions attacking people who are going around not liking the show, right? I've seen the kind of war of words between El Patron and Mr. TARDIS and his minions, and they've gone down some very dark avenues to try and disenfranchise El Patron. But unfortunately for them, this El Patron guy is very thick-skinned and he just laughs it all off. And he knows how to come back from what they're doing. I would suspect that Mr. TARDIS... Now, who is Mr. TARDIS? Mr. TARDIS is a very, very prominent Doctor Who fan, or so we think. I mean, it's starting to become very suspect whether he's a Doctor Who fan or not. But still got my breakfast on my lips. Happens, right? But yeah, so yeah, I discovered him. I used to like what he used to do when I first discovered him. He spoke very openly and honestly about Doctor Who. He seemed very passionate. I liked what he had to say. He delivered his dialogue really well. He seemed to have a good personality. But what's happened to Mr. TARDIS since the season 11? He's become a bit of a monster. He wants to gobble up anyone who speaks ill of season 11, and it's just not on. And he's quite a clever guy because he gets other people to do his dirty work. We know that some guy got El Patron to do an interview with him, and only to mock him on Twitter afterwards. El Patron talked about this on his YouTube video. I would imagine that El Patron's a bit of a ball breaker. He's enjoying what he's doing. He's found success posting the videos he's doing. So when you find a successful kind of ink or hook on YouTube, you repeat, you keep on doing what you're doing. So whether or not he really passionately hates season 11, doesn't like Jodie Whittaker's irritation of the Doctor, who knows? It's working for him, so he's going to carry on doing it, and he's going to keep on winding up tightly wound people. But what I would say is, in this, I'm giving you the example of what Mr. TARDIS and his minions are doing, because it makes them look really ugly. Because while Mr. TARDIS on his videos will talk about toxic fandoms, a toxic fandom he's a part of, by the way, it does make me laugh when a lot of these sites go, let's talk about Doctor Who's fandom. Doctor Who's fandom right now. It's like they're not part of the problem. We're all part of the problem because we're all part of the fandom. And the first problem is not us. It's the people who make this show. They've made it a divisive arena to be in because of what they did. They took a 55-year-old property, right, and they said, right, we're going to cast the first woman we find. Hey, the showrunner's mate, she'll do. We'll put her in charge of the TARDIS. It's all right, she's a woman. Why can't she be a doctor? So we put her in. We write very underwhelming stories. We underdevelop her. But because she's a woman, it's all right. Because she's a woman. She's representing women. Is she? Is she representing women? Girls, comment down below. Is Jodie Whittaker's Doctor a representation of what you would be like as a Time Lord? I think I know your answer. It will be no. This isn't about sexism or representation. This is about something very wrong being done to a show. They decided to cast a woman, a very controversial thing, by the way. But not only that, they cast the wrong woman for the job. They brought in a guy who has been underdeveloping this female doctor because he's a sexist. He's underdeveloped her because she's a woman. Because these SJW creators believe that women shouldn't be challenged, that things should come easy to them. But on the second hand, they'll be talking about strong, independent women. But how do we know she's strong if she doesn't go through anything, right? This isn't the doctor. She isn't the doctor, right? She's just a very attractive female performer who can deliver some lines, and that's that. This has been such a boring, mundane season, and anyone who doesn't want to admit that is because they're lying to themselves and they're lying to their audiences as well. What Mr. TARDIS should be saying is, the truth. Mr. TARDIS doesn't like season 11. Of course he doesn't. Nobody actually is enjoying season 11. But the whole point is, nobody's allowed to say it. We've all got to pretend everything in the garden is rosy, because if we don't, people like Mr. TARDIS and his gangsters will come and get us. Ooh! Mr. TARDIS and his minions thought they were clever because they found out El Patron's real name. Even though El Patron has been given information about Mr. TARDIS and has decided not to reveal it, right? Who's the bigger person here? Who's the bigger person? Now, I don't agree with everything El Patron does, but I think some of it is done for effect. But at the end of the day, it's his channel. This is the thing. No matter how offensive you find someone, it is their right to be offensive, like it's your right to be non-offensive. This is the problem with ideologies. People go on social media spouting their ideologies, but spouting them like their ideology is correct, and yours is wrong. This is the best way to represent your ideology, is not talking about it, right? You know your opinions. You know your opinions about politics and life. Why do we all need to know about them? And this is the problem with the entertainment industry right now. Your ideology is a spit in the face for someone else. So why spout it? Entertainment should be about entertainment. That's what it should be. But we have gone down a very divisive route, both creatively and in the fandom. If I could advise Mr. TARDIS and his minions, Mr. TARDIS believes, why do you think Mr. TARDIS calls himself Mr. TARDIS? Because he thinks he's the emperor of the fandom. Whatever he says goes. I'm going to have to close up so you understand me, Mr. TARDIS. We're not afraid of you. You will not drive us out of this fandom. You already told us to get the fuck out of this fandom. That's not going to happen. Oh, and you haven't hurt our feelings, Mr. TARDIS. If you want a war, you can have one. But ultimately, the reason you're kicking and screaming like a little baby is because you've lost. Your ideology has lost. Doctor Who has failed in merchandising. In season 11 pre-orders, the lowest pre-orders. The audience scores on Rotten Tomatoes and other meters were 40 at the beginning of the week and are going down, down, down. Is it the Russian bots, Mr. TARDIS? This show is a failure. It's a failure. At the end of the day, I admit, I can. You're right about the ratings. They're solid. They're fine. They're not disastrous. You are correct about that. But at the end of the day, there's more to this than ratings. You have to look at the full board. If I concede the ratings are solid, you must concede that the audience scores are to be worried. The low merchandise. I mean, they're having to give away the 13th Doctor's doll. Nobody's interested in this Doctor. Apart from SJWs and people from the LGBT community. God knows why. She's not even gay, right? I mean, it's hilarious. But obviously, people have started to fantasize about her and Yaz. Even though her and Yaz have got the romantic chemistry of a tree and a dog, basically, right? The dog weeds on the tree, right? And that is the chemistry of Yaz and the Doctor. There's nothing there. In fact, there's more sexual tension between Graham and the Doctor than there is between Yaz. And in fact, I'm surprised people are not shipping them two, because when they're in a room on their own together, it does get a bit heated, especially when the Doctor was threatening Graham. Oh, looked a bit kinky, didn't it? No, we can't ship them because he's an older white male, and that would be wrong if they had sexual tension and they had a relationship, because white men are evil and women are good. It's become so childish, so pathetic. And this is where we are now. I'm sure there's some of you who have just entered this fandom at the beginning of the season who love it. I believe you. I believe you like it. But there is no long-running Doctor Who fan who can convince me they like this series. So it's become a war between the old age Doctor Who fans, and that doesn't necessarily mean you're old, and the new age season 11 Doctor Who fans. But then you've got a long-running, so apparently, allegedly long-running Doctor Who fan like Mr. TARDIS, who's going around intimidating people and YouTubers who don't agree with his opinion. That's wrong. Now, I don't know you, Mr. TARDIS, but when El Patron did his video and I could hear you and your mates doing a podcast and saying, well, El Patron still hasn't replied to me. You think you're protecting Mr. TARDIS. You've got your little minions, you send them out to do your work. While you sit there, sorry about the frog in my throat, but while you sit there and you smoke your cigar and you don't put any risk to yourself, you're getting them to do your bidding for you. Going out to try and scare and intimidate and get rid of anyone who speaks ill of this season or yourself. You've made enemies, Mr. TARDIS. There's no question about that. You will continue to make enemies because you are not, you know, in life, right? If we make this a black and white thing, good versus evil, let's do it. There's El Patron, he's the good guy, and you're the villain. How did that happen, Mr. TARDIS? How did it happen? It didn't have to be this way. You were a prominent Doctor Who YouTuber, and now you have become the problem. You have become the problem because you just fail to understand. All you do is reverberate the same stuff all the time. Oh, the ratings are great. The ratings are great. The ratings are great. Consolidate, consolidate. The ratings are great. The ratings are great. You keep on talking about the ratings. Talk about the creative issues with this show. You don't do much of that, do you? You were all very gobby when Moffat was here, right? But now you found yourself a nice, cool little SJW audience and you're lapping it up. Get out of this fandom. No. Mr. TARDIS, we are not going to get out of this fandom. This is not your fandom. You don't own Doctor Who. You are not the president of Doctor Who. If I were you, I'd take a step back. I'd take a step back and I'd be more friendly. Because at the end of the day, we all want one thing. Doctor Who to be awesome.